Fairy tales are wondrous things, from nymphs to birds of prey, but the tale I tell you now is more terrifying than any tale ever told. Sitting in the dark is something I would not suggest you do. Make sure you are not alone, in a brightly lit room, and your doors securely locked. Thinking you haven't been warned would be a big mistake, because you have. A clean and vibrant neighborhood just outside of New York had long been the wish of Anna Maria. She longed to live there all of her life, and now that dream was to come true. Just recently married, she and her new husband bought a house in the famed neighborhood, Valleyview. The houses, with their pristine gardens, white picket fences, and flowers that looked too perfect, were the envy of all. She hadn't met any neighbors yet, but figured she would in the days that followed. Little did she know that day would soon be arriving, and her nightmare was about to begin. It was mid-July, and Anna was out in her yard, pulling weeds. She looked a mess, but she didn't care. It wasn't like she was going anywhere. There was a strange feel about the day, something akin to that of a storm about to brew. Anna looked at the cloudless sky, thought nothing of it, and went back to work. Then a soft, sexy voice from her left filtered through the air. "Why, hello!" Anna heard a distant rumble. Where in the heck is there a storm? Anna looked and said, "Hello." Standing in the driveway was a woman, tall, hair styled in a French chiffon, and altogether stunning. She had on gardening gloves and a white summer dress covered in pink polka dots. To complete the ensemble, she wore white sandals with rhinestones. Oh, how pretty. Anna looked her up and down and thought, okay, who in their right mind does gardening in a get-up that's fit for church? But she kept her thoughts to herself. "I'm Anna Marie. Just moved in a few weeks ago." She held out her hand, but the woman eyed her hand and then looked back at Anna. "You look positively dreadful, darling. Have you taken ill?" "No, I'm working in the garden. This is what I wear when I work outside." Curt and to the point, Anna wanted to chew this Barbie doll to bits. "Oh, I see. How nice. I, too, am working in my garden. See?" She held up her gloved hands. "Don't you hate it when bugs attack your precious flowers? I find it positively dreadful." Anna stifled a snort and said, "Oh yes, positively dreadful, the little buggers." She didn't like the emphasis her new neighbor had put on the word attack. And she didn't like what she was feeling from this new neighbor of hers. She chose her words with care. Words crept into mind, words that any Christian woman shouldn't use. But she remembered her husband and kept them to herself. After a few seconds of silence, her neighbor suddenly sprang to life and said, "Well, I really must go. Hubby will be coming home soon, and I must look presentable, you know. As I'm sure you always try to do, too. Ta-ta! Hope we can talk again. It has been absolutely splendid." And like a model on the runway, she wagged her hips down her driveway, up to her back door, and in she went. Anna got up there, stood there, dumbfounded. Is she for real? I mean, seriously, she thought to herself. Who in their right mind? Well, maybe she's not in her right mind. No, she's definitely not. That lady is loony as a jaybird. The words, presentable for my hubby, played back in her mind, and she started to wonder if she had gone back in time to the 1960s. Oh, it's much worse than that, dear. Yeah, and Santa Claus is really real. She dismissed all of her weird thoughts and ideas and decided that her neighbor was a neat freak and odd. Nothing more or nothing less. Another rumble stirred the air. Strange weather we're having today, don't you think? Anna looked once more at the sky, but again there was nothing but brilliance. Then a thought crept into her mind. Her neighbor, her perfect neighbor, without an ounce of wrong with her, looked too perfect, even her skin. It had shone when she came into the sun, and not a greasy, sweaty shine either. It had looked almost plastic. No, I'm getting as loony as she is. Next time I see her, I'll have to remember to ask her name. It's probably something like Barbie. She laughed at the thought and went back to working in her garden. By the time she finished, it was late afternoon. Dinner needed to be started. She cleaned herself up and went into their small but cozy kitchen. Fried chicken with a fresh salad and baked potato sounded just right. While she was getting the oil out, she heard a knock at the front door, and she glanced at the clock. Now, who was it? Maybe it's Gidget, Anna thought, and she laughed some more. Walking to the front door, she heard another rumble, only this time it was louder than the last one. Goosebumps began to pimple the skin of her arms as she made her way to the front door and opened it. Her neighbor had come back. "It's my lucky day," she thought, as she sighed and put a hand on her hip. But aloud she said only, "Oh, it's you. Sorry to bother you, but I was wondering if you had a cup of sugar I could borrow." She held up a bright pink cup for Anna to use. It had white polka dots on it. Anna raised her eyebrows and smirked a bit. Cup of sugar? Do people still do this? She wondered. Her neighbor stood there, mannequin-like, but it was her eyes that struck Anna. They looked lifeless and cold. Barbie must have thought she was clueless. She thrust the cup at Anna. "You know, that white stuff that comes in a paper bag-like container with the word sugar cane on the front? It's the prettiest color of pink." Anna didn't let her finish. She didn't want to, either. There was just something about this woman she didn't like. I know what sugar is. Hang on, I'll get you some." Hesitantly, she took the cup and walked back to her kitchen and opened the cupboard. "Oh my, you have such a charming little home here. Your husband must be ever so grateful at how well you keep it clean. I know my husband always is." Anna looked up quickly and saw that she had come in on her own accord. "Okay, that does it. This little nosy bitch has got to go." Quickly, she poured the sugar into the gawky teacup. It seemed to be coming off. The smell of pink roses and jasmine came wafting in. It seemed to be coming off of her neighbor. It was anything but a pleasant smell to Anna. It gagged her with such a force that her stomach tightened every time she took a breath in. She was about to put away the bag when she decided to ask a question. A stupid question at that. With the way things were playing out, she thought. Why not? "I bet your husband's name is Ken," she said as she handed her back the cup. "Well, however did you guess? That's just simply amazing." Another rumble, louder yet. Anna dropped the sugar bag on the counter. Damn! She couldn't believe her ears. Was she having a nightmare? Or was her neighbor being silly just then? "Barbie?" The rumbling was getting even louder, and yet the sky still had its summer blue hues in it. "Oh, you know my name too? How do you do that? Gosh, you are so clever. I bet your husband is as clever as you are. My husband tells me all the time how smart your husband is, and talks about him all the time." "He does?" Her palms were sweaty, and the tension in her stomach was getting worse. She was getting woozy, and thought if her neighbor didn't get the heck out of her home, she would faint dead straight on the floor. "Why, of course he does, silly. Everyone at Mattel thinks highly of him. You must come over to our house tomorrow. We're having a barbecue, and Ken is making the best little hamburgers. I'll introduce you to my little cousin." "Don't tell me. Skipper?" She held her stomach tightly. "There you go again. I must say, you are smart. Well, I took way too much of your time, so I'll just be going now. See you tomorrow. Is 5 all right with you?" "Peachy." "Great then. See you tomorrow, and thank you for the sugar. You're a doll." And just like that, she saw herself out. Anna stood there, completely and utterly in shock. Still holding her stomach, t-shirt all gathered in her fist, she realized she was now fine. No pain. It was just gone. Anna stood there, assessing all that had just played out, and wondering why her husband hadn't mentioned any of this to her. She figured that would be the first thing to ask him when he got home that evening. The clock in the living room chimed 5 o'clock, and she could hear the sound of a car driving up their driveway. Anna rushed out to meet her husband and hugged the stuffing out of him. She needed badly to forget the day's weirdness. She was just about to throw her arms around his neck when she stopped. This time, besides the rumble, a flash of light, like lightning, lit the sky. Anna looked up and saw that a storm was finally brewing, gray and off in the distance, but approaching nevertheless. She felt oddly disturbed by this, but didn't know why. Storms never bothered her, and yet this one did. She looked at her husband and trepidation filled her soul. Something felt wrong, very wrong. "Honey, are you okay? Did you work at all?" Usually when he came home he'd be somewhat dirty, but today he was fresh, clean, and his clothing looked as if it had just come out of the store. "Yes, I worked, you silly girl. You look positively ill. Are you all right?" That was the same thing Barbie had said about her this morning. "I'm fine. At least I think I am." She looked closer at him. Something about him was different, and she couldn't place it. The clouds that had come out started to move and blacken. Then it hit her, his look. No, darling, are you sure you're all right?" She wanted to touch his face. He looked shiny, like Barbie. She brought her hand up to his face and stopped. She wanted to see if he felt. "No hug for your husband?" "Yeah, sorry." She reluctantly placed her arms around his neck, and that's when she froze. He was hard, cool, and plastic. Anna stepped back so fast that she tripped and fell on her butt. The wind began to stir, as did the clouds, circular, ominous, black with purple and orange hues mixed in now. "Honey, are you okay? Here, let me help you up." He reached his hand down toward her, but she backed away further. "No, go away. You're not my husband. My husband wasn't plastic like you." The neighbor's car pulled up just then, and Ken got out. "Hey, neighbors, is there a problem? Here, let me help you." He leaped over the fence as if in a tennis match and gallantly strolled over. "I think she's been out in the sun too long." "Yeah, you may be right. Her skin looks quite pliable. Not good. I think she might melt." Both men began to laugh. "Better get her indoors, my man." "Melt? Do you hear yourselves? I'm not plastic. I'm human just like you were, Jim. What's going on here?" "Honey, I'm still your husband. I haven't changed. It's you that has changed. But you'll come to work with me, and we'll fix you up in no time." "No!" "Jim, she's really delusional. We better take her now. I'll get Barbie to make us some lemonade to take along." Anna ran for the house, but the door wouldn't open. Pounding and screaming for help, she panicked. Just above them, the storm that had been brewing all day had arrived. Black, with broken shards of light spearing their way through the rain-swollen clouds. No thunderous clashes, though. Only Anna's piercing screams were heard that night. The next day, Anna was out in her yard, gardening as usual. But this time she wore a bright yellow sundress with matching sandals. She looked up just in time to see her husband off for work. "Have a good day, dear. And don't stay out in the sun too long, okay? We don't want you to melt."